Breaking news. America stands on the edge of the greatest historic collapse in modern times. What we are witnessing tonight could redefine not just a nation's future, but the course of global history itself. A story that feels less like a headline and more like history being written in real time. Across the nation and around the world, people are waking up to a reality they never thought possible. The first visible crack in the very foundation of what many believe to be unshakable. It started quietly, almost like a whisper, a signal that most dismissed as background noise. But tonight, that whisper has become a roar, and the shock wave is being felt everywhere. For decades, the United States has been described as a pillar of strength, politically, economically, and culturally. But pillars don't crumble all at once. They weaken slowly, almost invisibly, until one day the first fracture appears. That is what we are witnessing right now. A sudden moment, a jolt in the system, has exposed vulnerabilities that were always there, hidden beneath the surface. The illusion of stability has cracked, and with it comes a wave of uncertainty, spreading like fire through dry grass. Imagine the scene. Ordinary families turning on the evening news, seeing the headlines scroll across the screen and realizing that something has shifted. Bankers are whispering about instability in the markets. Politicians are pointing fingers, scrambling to explain what they could not prevent. And on the streets, people are asking one another the same chilling question. If this can happen, what's next? History teaches us that collapses rarely begin with explosions. They begin with the smallest fissures, moments the powerful ignore, moments the public underestimates. Think back to the days before past crises, the overlooked warnings, the ignored reports, the leaders who promised everything is fine. That same pattern echoes tonight. The first crack has appeared, and though it may not yet bring the house down, it sends a signal that the structure is not as secure as everyone thought. Experts are already drawing parallels with moments that changed the world forever. The fall of great empires often began not with total destruction, but with small, almost invisible shifts that snowballed into catastrophe. Whether it was the slow decay of Rome, the sudden fall of Wall Street in 1929, or the unexpected collapse of the Soviet Union, history's greatest turning points often started just like this, quietly, subtly, and then all at once. And yet, beyond the numbers, beyond the speeches, it is the human side that tells the real story. Small business owners wondering if they can keep their doors open another week. Retirees staring at savings accounts that no longer feel safe. Parents asking themselves how to explain to their children that the future might not be as secure as they once believed. These aren't just statistics. They are lives, emotions, and decisions being reshaped by a single crack in the system. Around the world, eyes are locked on America. Allies are worried. Rivals are watching closely, calculating their moves. The ripple effects of this first crack are already crossing borders, creating uncertainty in global markets, shaking international confidence and sparking urgent conversations in foreign capitals. The United States has always been seen as the anchor, but if the anchor drifts, what happens to the ships tied to it? This is not yet the end of the story. It may not even be the middle, but make no mistake, tonight marks the beginning. The first crack has appeared, and it cannot be ignored. Whether it widens into collapse or becomes a wake-up call for renewal depends on what happens next. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see if leaders can act, if people can adapt, and if history will record this moment as the start of a fall or the spark of a turning point. One thing is certain, we are living through history, not just reading about it. And as the dust settles tonight, the question remains, what story will tomorrow bring? This is a moment that demands our attention, our vigilance, and perhaps our courage. Stay with us, because this story is only just beginning. While the headlines may seem sudden, the truth is this moment has been building quietly for years, hidden in plain sight. What they didn't see coming wasn't invisible. It was ignored, overlooked, brushed aside until it grew too large to contain. Now the consequences are here, and the world is beginning to realize just how deep the cracks run. Every great crisis has a backstory, a trail of warning signs that history later exposes in stark detail, and this one is no different. For months, even years, experts hinted at trouble. Analysts raised their eyebrows at the numbers, journalists flagged unusual trends, and everyday citizens whispered to one another that something didn't feel right. But the noise of daily life drowned it all out. People went about their routines. Governments reassured them that everything was stable, and the hidden buildup continued just below the surface. It is often said that history doesn't shout, it whispers. That whisper can be the price of groceries slowly climbing higher than usual, or the small-town factory laying off workers one shift at a time. It can be the uneasy silence in a meeting room when the questions no one wants to answer finally get asked. Individually, these signs look harmless, explainable, temporary, but together they tell a story of pressure building, of foundations weakening, and when that pressure finally breaks through, the shock feels sudden only because the warning signs were ignored for so long. Think about the ordinary people who now find themselves caught in the middle of this storm. A single mother watching her rent rise faster than her paycheck. A retiree reassured for years that for now, the lesson is simple yet sobering. What they didn't see coming was always there. It's just that now none of us can look away. Stay with us. What began as a troubling sign has now escalated into something far more serious. What once seemed bad has crossed the line into unthinkable. The warnings we discussed days ago, the cracks we saw forming in the foundation, have widened into a full-blown fracture, and the consequences are spreading faster than anyone imagined. The situation is no longer theoretical. It is real. It is happening. And the escalation is pushing events into dangerous and unpredictable territory. At first, it was easy for many to dismiss the early reports. A dip in the markets, a sudden speech that sounded more aggressive than usual, a wave of unusual decisions that seemed to come out of nowhere. People thought it was just politics, or just another temporary financial storm, or just another moment that would pass. But it didn't pass. The pressures built higher, the decisions became sharper, and one by one, the safety nets that people relied on started to give way. The escalation has been swift. What started as a conversation among analysts is now a debate raging in living rooms across America. Banks are tightening, investors are panicking, and families are rethinking everything from their jobs to their savings to the very stability of the world around them. Leaders are rushing to reassure the public, but their words sound more uncertain than ever before. Promises of stability are clashing with the reality on the ground, and the gap between those two realities is only widening. For the ordinary person, the escalation feels less like a headline and more like a slow-motion avalanche. A father who thought his retirement fund was untouchable is suddenly watching its value plummet. A young couple planning their first home finds that interest rates are climbing beyond reach. A small-town grocery store, already stretched thin, now faces supply shortages that could close its doors for good. These are not abstract problems. They are human lives being reshaped, upended, and in some cases, devastated. And the world is watching. Allies who depend on America for strength and stability are quietly asking how much longer they can hold on. Rival nations are seizing the opportunity, using the uncertainty to expand their influence, test boundaries, and challenge the balance of power. The escalation is not contained within one border. It is rippling outward, touching markets in Europe, stirring tensions in Asia, and shaking confidence across the globe. What was once bad for one nation is quickly becoming unthinkable for the entire world order. The pace of change is adding to the sense of fear. Weeks' worth of developments are unfolding in days, and what once felt like a distant possibility is now staring people in the face. Escalation has a way of erasing time, of turning the someday into right now. And that's exactly what we are seeing tonight. The shift from bad to unthinkable has left no room for complacency. Decisions must be made, and every choice carries consequences that will echo far beyond this moment. History will likely look back at this as a turning point, the moment when events leapt forward in ways no one thought possible. And yet, even as the escalation continues, there remains one critical question. Is this the breaking point, or is it still a warning? That question has no clear answer, but the choices made in the coming hours and days will decide whether this escalation becomes irreversible. Tonight, as the world watches closely, we are reminded of how quickly stability can unravel, how fast the line between bad and unthinkable can be crossed. The escalation is real, it is here, and it demands our attention. We will continue to follow every development as this story unfolds. For now, one thing is clear. What was once unthinkable is already upon us. Stay with us. Behind the headlines, behind the numbers, there is a deeper story unfolding, one measured not in charts or statistics, but in human lives. When systems break down, when nations stumble, it is not leaders or institutions who carry the heaviest burden, it is ordinary people. Tonight we turn to the side of this crisis that is too often overlooked, the human cost, the lives forever changed. At first, the warnings felt distant. They were framed in the language of economics, politics, and strategy. But for families on the ground, those abstract words quickly turned into hard realities. A father sits at the kitchen table late at night, calculator in hand, staring at bills that no longer add up. A mother puts back groceries at the checkout line because prices have jumped again in just a single week. A retiree who spent a lifetime saving watches the value of that nest egg shrink by the day, wondering if decades of planning are slipping away in front of their eyes. These are the faces of the crisis, and they reveal a truth that statistics can never fully capture. When institutions falter, the pain spreads unevenly but widely. Small businesses that once thrived in their communities now struggle to survive. Restaurants that were neighborhood staples are shuttering, leaving not just empty buildings but a sense of loss that ripples through towns. Workers who gave years of loyalty to their companies find themselves suddenly unemployed, facing a job market more uncertain than ever. Children hear their parents' whispered conversations about money and security, and though they may not understand every word, they feel the tension hanging in the air. The human cost is not just financial, it is emotional, even spiritual. People begin to question their sense of stability, their belief in the future, their faith in systems they once trusted without hesitation. Anxiety spreads like wildfire. Sleepless nights become common. Friends and families who once talked about dreams and plans now find themselves talking about survival. And through it all, a quiet grief grows, the grief of watching what was once familiar slip into something unrecognizable. But this story does not stop at national borders. Around the world, millions are watching closely because America's struggles are never America's alone. Global markets react in real time. pulling families in distant countries into the same storm. Migrant workers who send money home see their wages shrink. Farmers in far-off lands find their exports stalled, their futures uncertain, and governments abroad are forced to make difficult decisions, balancing their own citizens' needs against the ripple effects of America's turmoil. Lives everywhere are touched, connected by invisible threads to a crisis that began far away but now feels dangerously close. This is the part of history people feel in their bones, the part that doesn't make it into official reports but lingers in memory long after the headlines fade. Years from now, children will remember the tension in their homes, the empty shelves in stores, the uncertainty that defined their youth. Families will tell stories of sacrifices made, of resilience tested, and of the choices they had to make when the future felt like quicksand. These memories will shape not just personal lives, but entire generations. And so, as the cameras capture speeches and the analysts debate policies, we cannot lose sight of the most important truth. Behind every statistic, there is a story. Behind every headline, there is a human being. Tonight, those stories remind us that the cost of collapse is not measured only in numbers, but in lives forever changed. This is not just a crisis of politics or economics. It is a crisis of people, of families, of human endurance. And as we continue to follow these events, one thing remains clear. History will not only remember what happened, but how it was lived by those who bore its weight. The dust settles on a week of shocking developments. The world is left staring at one chilling uncertainty. What happens next? The events we've seen unfold were once unthinkable, then undeniable, and now they've left us in a moment of suspense where the future feels like a question no one can answer. Leaders are meeting behind closed doors. Analysts are scrambling for predictions, and ordinary people everywhere are left wondering if tomorrow will bring relief, more chaos, or something even worse. The unanswered question looms over every conversation. Families at their dinner tables talk about it in hushed voices, not wanting to alarm the children, but knowing the kids can sense their worry. Business owners wonder if they should close early, save what they can, or gamble on holding out for better days. Retirees sit in quiet disbelief, thinking they had seen the worst storms already, and yet feeling that something unfamiliar and unpredictable is taking shape. It's not just a question of economics or politics anymore. It's a question of what kind of world is coming and how much of the old one will still remain standing when this is over. Throughout history, moments like this have always carried the same haunting silence. Before the storm breaks, before the next shoe drops, there is a pause where everyone senses change is in the air, but no one can quite describe it. That is where we are tonight. The systems people trusted are wobbling. The guarantees once spoken with confidence now sound uncertain. And every choice made in these critical hours will ripple outward in ways that cannot be undone. Globally, the uncertainty is spreading even faster. In Europe, officials are holding emergency meetings, preparing for scenarios that range from economic disruption to political realignment. In Asia, markets are watching every movement from Washington, reacting in real time with cependant harp swings that reveal just how fragile confidence has become. Even in regions far removed from the immediate crisis, governments are reviewing their plans, tightening their defenses, and quietly preparing for the possibility that the world could be entering a new, more volatile chapter. But perhaps the most unsettling part of this unanswered question is the silence from those in power. Speeches are being made, statements are being released, yet none of them give the clarity people desperately want. Instead of certainty, there are only possibilities, some hopeful, some frightening. Could this be the beginning of renewal, a painful but necessary shake-up that clears the way for a stronger future? Or is this the first chapter of decline, a slow unraveling of systems too strained to recover? For now, both outcomes remain on the table, and that duality leaves millions of lives hanging in suspense. And for the ordinary citizen, that uncertainty cuts deepest of all. Parents lie awake at night asking themselves if the plans they made for their children still make sense. Workers wake up each morning wondering if the jobs they depend on will still be there by the end of the week. Students look at the world they're about to inherit and question whether it will offer opportunity or only struggle. Every headline, every news alert, every rumor feeds into the same restless question: what happens next? In moments like these, history reminds us that turning points are rarely recognized in the moment. Only later, with the clarity of hindsight, do people realize they were living through the start of something that would change everything. Perhaps that is what we are witnessing tonight. Perhaps this unanswered question is not just about tomorrow, but about the next decade, the next generation, the next chapter of global history. And so, as the world holds its breath, the question remains suspended in the air, waiting for events to reveal the answer. What happens next will shape not just governments and markets, but families, communities, and the future we all share. After weeks of escalating tension, countless warnings, and lives turned upside down, we have finally arrived at what many are calling the moment of decision. It is the climax of a story that has been unfolding step by step, and now there is no more room for delay, no more time to look the other way. The choices made in the hours and days ahead will determine not just the outcome of this crisis, but the path of history for years to come. This is the point where the world holds its breath, waiting to see which way the future will break. For a long time, this moment seemed distant, something that would come eventually, but not yet. People thought there would always be more time, more chances to prepare, more opportunities to prevent the unthinkable. But the clock has run down. The pressure that has been building in quiet corners has surged into the open, and now decisions must be made in the spotlight, with the entire world watching. There is no escaping it, no postponing it, and no pretending it isn't here. The atmosphere tonight is heavy with tension. In government buildings, behind closed doors, leaders are weighing options that could alter the course of nations. In corporate towers and financial hubs, the fate of billions of dollars hangs in the balance as investors prepare for whatever comes next. On the streets, ordinary people feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down, wondering if the stability they once trusted has finally slipped away for good. Everyone is searching for answers, and everyone knows that the time for talk is over. Action is all that remains. This moment of decision is not just about policies or numbers. It is about human lives. A mother trying to decide if she should move her family to safer ground. A small business owner debating whether to shut their doors or fight to survive one more week. A student questioning whether the future they were planning for even exists anymore. These are not abstract choices. They are deeply personal, and they will leave marks that last for generations. And the ripple effects extend far beyond one country. Around the globe, leaders are on edge, waiting to see which way America turns. Allies are bracing for impact, ready to adjust their strategies based on the decisions made here. Rivals are watching closely, calculating how to use the uncertainty to their advantage. Global markets, already trembling, stand on the edge of dramatic shifts. This is not just a national moment of decision, it is a global one, and the consequences will not respect borders. What makes this climax so unnerving is the simple truth that the future is still unwritten. There are paths that lead to recovery, renewal, and strength, and there are paths that lead to further collapse, deeper division, and instability. Which one we take depends on the decisions being made right now. History is full of moments like this, turning points where everything changed not because the world demanded it, but because choices pushed it in one direction or another. Tonight we stand at one of those turning points. The moment of decision has arrived, and the weight of it is something no one can ignore. It is not just about leaders in high offices, but about each of us, how we respond, how we prepare, and how we hold on to hope in times of uncertainty. The climax of this story is here, and the call is clear. Watch closely, stay awake, and do not underestimate the importance of this moment, because the decisions being made now will echo long after the headlines fade. This is history in motion, and what happens next will shape not only our present, but our future. Stay with us.